It's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
Introducing the Blazor Power Hour.
No, seriously, it's time for Blazor Power Hour.
Hey friends, it's time for the Blazor Power Hour.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
You're checking out the Blazor Power Hour.
Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour.
It's Blazor Power Hour. Go Ed!
Are you ready? Are you set? Got everything all ready to go? Let's do it. Let's do the Blazor Power Hour.
All right, folks, it's time for another Blazor Power Hour. Each week, try to take a single Blazor concept and break it down in about an hour. We've been pretty good about the hour thing-ish. We've run a little bit long on every show so far, but not too much longer. It's been a fun challenge so far to come up with these and make them work. And hopefully you guys enjoy today's show. We're going to talk about logging. Welcome back, Curious Drive. Welcome to the Blazor Power Hour. Curious Drive has a stream now, by the way. And hey there, how you doing? I don't know if that's a name I can pronounce. If it is one, nice handle though. Thanks for coming to the show. So yeah, Curious Drive has a show. Make sure you check him out on Twitch. Last week, we talked a bit about, let's see, what was last week's show? We did, oh shoot, I'm going to draw a blank because I can't remember what I did a week ago. And now this week, hopefully I don't forget next week what we're doing. We're going to do some logging on Blazor Wasm. My troubleshooting skills are rudimentary at best. No. I do decent troubleshooting .NET code. However, my logging game is not strong. Like, I need to get logging involved in my apps. I fought tooth and nail with Blazor size over the week, and there were things that I wished I had put logging in. I'm going in and turning console.log on and off, and all that stuff seems to be completely unnecessary. So I thought I'd look this week at logging in Blazor WebAssembly to see what is available for that. And if we pull up the docs for this, let's take a look at what docs.microsoft.com has. And there is a built-in ability to do logging in Blazor. And I think there's some NuGet packages that help with this as well. But if we just go to the pure docs page and look at what we've got here, it looks fairly simple on the surface. We add a using statement to a program CS that gives us access to the logging pipeline in .NET, in ASP.NET. So we could say builder, logging, set minimal level, and we can adjust the level of logging we provide. And then we need a log provider. And this is where it kind of gets a little tripped up here. It says custom logging provider. So we have to provide or use a logging provider here. We have to new one up. And then it goes on to talk about SignalR logging. So we could do SignalR logging. And then it goes over and talks about how to actually implement the logger in Razor components themselves. So this is using some sort of logger to log, or we can use the log factory, etc. So a little bit of a rabbit hole is right here where you hit this add a provider. So if you don't have a provider that you already want to use, like I said, there's likely some of these already available on. Oh yeah, we did empty state components last week. Curious Drive, you have a better memory than I do. I think I've got some years on you, my friend. I'm starting to lose it. We have a custom logging provider, and like I said, I think there's some on NuGet that you can grab for Blazor already, and there may be some on NuGet that aren't Blazor specific but still work in WebAssembly. I haven't gotten into that to find out which ones work, but we're gonna build a custom logging provider today, just so you can see the full scope of what we need to do here. So let's get into it, and I have some pre-written code that I'm going to be referencing because this is an hour show. I want to make sure that I don't spend an hour trying to fix some trivial problem. So I will be bouncing back and forth to some notes that I have as we go. So I just wanted to kind of be clear that while this is a live stream and I am live coding, there's a little bit of a safety net built into this one. I feel you, Curious Drive. These are, I think, the 95 years you're talking about all happened within the time frame of last year. So, like, the COVID year is like the equivalent of about 90 years, I think. So, I feel you. All right, let's go back to docs real fast. We need to get our using statement popped in here. Actually, I'm trying to remember if this is even necessary. We'll put it in. It'll get grayed out for us if it ends up being redundant, which I think it might be by now. The docs might be slightly outdated. And then we need to set our minimum log level and our logging provider. So we'll do that right beneath our WebAssembly host builder. And then we reference builder, and then we add our logging. And this all gets done in this setup pipeline. And people like to trash regions, but this is actually probably a good spot to make a little note here in case you ever want to collapse these things. Yeah, I'm suggesting you use regions. They're not that bad. They do have their uses from time to time. So we could set up our logging here. We could move it to a method. We could do all that. But this is all in that responsibility of setting up the builder. So we'll go ahead and add our logging statement here. And we need a custom logging provider. And this is where the docs don't really explain how to do that. There are, however, docs on how to build a custom log provider. So you can branch off and go jump through those docs if you want. So what we're going to do today is we're going to build an InMemory provider. And it looks like we already have this using statement. Like I said, I think that one is redundant. We're going to build our own logging provider. We're going to build an InMemory logging provider. And this is something that you can use as a stepping stone for making your own logging provider and doing whatever type of logging that you want to do with WebAssembly, because WebAssembly is going to be an interesting scenario, because your log is not on the server, your log is on the client, so you have to get that log back to the server somehow. And depending on what information you're logging, you may have some user agreements that you need to surface, things like that. And then also, you have to wonder if you need to keep this in like local storage and then only upload it when there's a critical error, things like that. And then will you be able to get to the log because the app might have gone offline and that's why it's crashed. So there's a lot of scenarios that need to be thought of. So we're going to do something really basic so you can take this and extend it for whatever you feel like you need to actually log and how you want to get that back, whether it's HTTP or whatever it is you're going to do to recover these logs from your client, or maybe you're just using them in dev mode so you can track a problem. So I'm going to hit Control period on this, and I'm going to let Visual Studio go ahead and new up a class for me of custom logging provider. And then I'm going to go over, and you can see that just hitting Control period enter has generated the file in the root of my project. It's fine to leave it right there for the scope of the video. And then let me bump the font up here too. I noticed that it's a little small in my stream window. So we'll get this nice and big so you can see we have custom logging provider. And I'm going to change the name here. So let's do a quick refactor and rename, and we'll call this InMemory Provider. InMemory Logging Provider. And we're going to implement the iLogger provider interface here. So I'm going to hit Control period again, let it rename the file for one, and then we're going to do implement interface. And that will give us a stub of all of the things that we need for the logging provider. Okay, so now that we have this set up, I want to change this to, InMemory Logger provider. Just want to make sure it matches my notes. So when I go to upload this to our Blazor Power Hour page, everything matches up with the notes that I've taken. So we've implemented the interface, but right now it just throws a not implemented exception, but at least we have a stub of the methods that we want. And the code that I'm about to put in here has been lifted from the the examples I found on docs.microsoft.com. So every logger, custom logger that I've seen implements the concurrent dictionary. So this is a dictionary that is safe to use in situations where you might run into a race condition. So multiple things are trying to access the dictionary at the same time. And this provides methods to safely add things to the collection without having a collision. So it's got basically locking and that type of thing already built in. So we've got a private concurrent dictionary, and I have a new class that we're going to be making because we're just newing up a logging provider here. We need to make actual logger. So it's going to have the key of string and an in-memory logger, and then this is going to track any loggers that we have in the system. So we will go ahead and generate another type. So I'm going to hit Control period again, And this is going to add an InMemory Logger file to my project, and we'll get to that one in just a moment. Now that we have this read-only dictionary, we need to create a constructor that's going to populate this for us. So we can use the snippet CTOR, hit double tab here, and that's going to bring up a constructor for our logger provider. And then we need to new up a InMemory Logger here. We'll go ahead and call that log. There's no real need for parentheses or curly braces here. We can just throw this into a simple expression body member. So we'll say log. We're going to need to create a property to hold that log, and we'll pass one in from our constructor. And then we need to hold our log. So we'll say public InMemory Log. Let's see, InMemory Logger. Got a little conflict here. So it should be, getting a little bit ahead of myself, sorry. Let's start with no constructor. My bad. A little bit ahead of my notes there. We need to new up our InMemory Logger provider. Let's go ahead and just create an empty constructor for now. And then let's focus on creating the actual logger. We need to get the interface in here first before we can get to that other part I was getting ready to show you there. So we want to add a logger to our collection. So we'll do underscore loggers. And then we need to get or add. This is the part of the concurrent dictionary that is special to the concurrent dictionary versus a regular dictionary. So we have get or add versus just add. So we're going to go ahead and add a logger based on its category name. And then we're going to new up a name field. For the value here. And then we need to dispose this as well. And we're gonna have to correct this in a moment as well. Make sure I've got this all typed out right. We'll go ahead and dispose this. And to dispose it, we'll just clear that concurrent dictionary out. Let's see. This, again, might be a little ahead of my notes. Let's take get or add. We need to satisfy this second InMemory Logger value. And I'm still getting a little underscore here. Give me one sec, folks. All right, what is it angry about? Let's see. Ambiguous call between concurrent dictionary and concurrent dictionary value. All right. This needs to be a method here. So let's see if we can get on my InMemory Logger, we need to pass in a name here. There we go. And we need this on the constructor. So when we're newing up our InMemory Logger, I did not have the class set up yet. So we need to go ahead and start working on the class a little bit and make sure we can construct that class properly. So I want to have a private read-only string of names. We can put attach a name to this as well. And we want to pass that name in through that logger's constructor. So go ahead and pop the name on top of that. And then we'll go ahead and set the name. And that should make our provider happy. So we can actually new up that in-memory provider, and it is still angry at something here. And it needs to implement the iLogger interface. So our logger needs to be an iLogger for this to work. So we've got our provider and we've got our logger, and we're starting to work a little bit on our logger. So let's implement that interface. We'll do the same thing here, hit Control period, and let this stub out the rest of our method, or rest of our class. It's going to have a dispose method is enabled, and then the actual logging mechanism. So we'll go ahead and fill this in as well so we can new up our provider properly. So in our logger class, I'm going to shortcut this again just a little bit just for the scope of this video, but basically is enabled is going to look at the log level, and then based on the log level you can tell the consumer whether to enable this this logger or not. And we're not going to build the logic for that today. We're just going to say go ahead and return true, and this will always be on no matter what the level is for the logger. This logic is actually pretty simple to build. We're just going to try to shorten things up here a little bit. And then for just a simple example for now, we'll go ahead and just throw the log into the console. So we'll write this out to the browser's console until we do something else with it. So now we've got to dispose of this, and then we can just return a default here, and that will be enough to dispose this properly. Okay, so we're going to new this up. We'll be able to set a name for it so we can identify the logger in the log. Then we can go back to our provider, and our constructor is now happy because we're passing it that name, and it is returning back an iLogger. So we should be able to go ahead and run this now because we have all of the bits and pieces in place. So step one was setting up the basic log level, add the provider. We needed to create a provider. Again, you could shop for these on NuGet and see what's out there. I did not do that research. I wanted to see what I could do myself here. This in-memory logger provider needs to be an iLogger provider interface. So we go ahead and implement that. We fill in the implementation details. And then this requires a logger class, an iLogger. So we go ahead and implement those details on our custom logger. So our provider news up the logger for us, and then the provider news up everything in the pipeline for us. So now we have this available to use in our application, so we can come over to something in our pages and actually start using it. So let's do the obligatory counters example. So in our counter, what we can do is say @inject, and we're going to use dependency injection to resolve a logger here. And I believe I'm missing a using statement in here. So we'll go back and find, it was system extensions logging is what we need here, or it's not going to let us use this. So using system or Microsoft extensions logging, we'll create a new iLogger, and it wants a category name here, and we can put in a type, and this is going to be counter. And IntelliSense is doing weird stuff. So we have our iLogger. We'll go ahead and call that logger. What's nice about it being iLogger is we can go back to our program CS at any point in time and switch out the provider, and we can use a different logger in its place without having to go back to the component and make a change. So we're not going to new up an in-memory provider here. We're going to go ahead and just new up an iLogger, and then we can swap this out at any point. If we get time, which we may have a little bit of time here at the end of the show, we can actually go back and take a look at that. Maybe we'll build a second provider. Let's see what we've got here for questions. Briefly, would that is enabled reference config to make it... Yeah, so we can add configurations to this as well. So we'll look at configurations in just a minute. Maybe we can circle back in and use that is enabled as well. The idea was just try to get this up on the screen as fast as possible, and then we can keep expanding on it. So we have a little bit of a feedback loop. But that's a great question. So right now we're going to write everything out to the console. And what we want to do is put in a statement that lets us log something. So when we click the increment count button, let's go ahead and log this out and say that someone has clicked the button. So we can say logger, log warning, and then we can go ahead and run this, and we should be good to go. Fingers crossed. We got our application running, and I haven't seen any errors yet. We click on counter. So far, so good. Let's see what is in the console. And you can see already we are logging out a ton of information. So there are other parts of the system here that have logging statements enabled. And now that I've added a logger, that iLogger is being picked up by the Blazor framework, and it's logging out things with the render tree. So we can see the render tree, the root component initializing. And this is because we have all logging turned on. So everything is getting put out to the console. So if you scroll way down, get to the bottom here, it's rendering out all of our components for the page and the nav links. And if we click our button, there's our log statement that we added manually. So we have our logger built in our system now. So I want to do an in-memory logger, not just a console logger. So let's take this again and add something to it. Let's do a little bit of state here. Let's put all of our logs in a state where we can just go back and work through that state if we want to go explore it. So I'm going to come over to my logging example and add another class. And this is going to be a very, very simple class. Let me go back to my notes and make sure I name this the same as what I took down earlier. So I'm going to call this one InMemory Log. And this is just going to be a simple Blazor state object. So we'll add a property. We'll put the actual log statement in here. I also want to add an action in here. Let's see, give me me 1 second here. I've lost something in my notes. Want to make sure I get this right the first time so we don't burn a bunch of time troubleshooting today. This is going to be a very, very simple class. We'll go ahead and just copy paste it right out of my notes. I am cheating on the test, folks. There we go. All right, so we've got our in-memory log. And we're going to set up an event of action called onChange. And this is going to let us tie into a page's onChange event, or state has changed. We'll go ahead and log those statements into a list. And when we add an item to our log, we're going to go ahead and call the onChange action. So we can pipe that into our page state has changed, and we can display that on our page somewhere. So we need to go back and add this to our logger now. So we'll go into our InMemory Logger, and we're going to go ahead and add this in-memory piece to it. So what we need to do is set up a new in-memory log. I'm going to use read-only property for this. And this is going to be an in-memory log. And I'm going to call this in memory, or sorry, just memory. And I'm going to remove the setter from it because I'm going to set this through the constructor. So when I remove that setter, it's going to be a private read-only property. And then in my constructor, I'll add in-memory log as memory. And then we can say memory equals, and we'll pass in that constructor method. So our argument comes down, sets our read-only property, and now we have that available to us. And then down here, instead of writing this out to the console, I'm going to switch this out with a with an instance of that in-memory object, and then we'll call the log item method on it. And we'll pass in that same string that we're logging out to the console right now. So I'll steal this, and this will make it short work for us. And we can just drop in that line there, and we should be good to go. So now we've added this state object, and then we're newing one up when we construct our provider, or when we construct our logger, and then we're going to go ahead and add items to its memory when we have a log event happen. So this is very similar, to go back to the question about is enabled. Passing in this object is very similar to how we would do the configuration. We'd pass a configuration object in here, check that configuration object to determine if the log is enabled or not, and put that logic there to return true or false based on the configuration if we want to enable this. All right, so we need to go back to logging provider again. You can see my constructor is now broken. So we need to give this an instance of the in-memory provider to pass in to that read-only property that we have internally. So let's go ahead and add that that in-memory log here. We'll do the same thing. We'll set up a read-only property here, and we'll pass that again through the constructor that we never ended up using at the very beginning here. So we'll say in-memory log. We'll go ahead and pass that over and set that right here. So this is very similar to what we're doing in the logger. We're taking in a constructor, we're passing that to a read-only property, and then we'll go ahead and pass that down to the InMemory logger. So the provider's taking the constructor and just passing that along to the constructor of the logger. And then in our program CS, since we're going to be using this same instance throughout the application, what I'm going to do here, it might not be normal practice for working with loggers. I'm going to go ahead and tell Dependency Injection how exactly I want to set up this this instance. So I'm going to new up InMemory Log, and then I'm going to inject that into Dependency Injection, and then I'll pass that same instance along to the provider. So I'm creating a single instance of the InMemory Log, making sure it's available in Dependency Injection, and also making it available to the logger provider. So what I can do with this now, so I can come up to, say, our main layout, and inside of the main layout, I can set up a little section in here to write out my logging statements to the actual application UI instead of having them show up in the console. So in here, I'm not going to inject the logger. I just want the memory that's sitting there. So I'm going to say inject the memory from that, from Dependency Injection. We'll go ahead and grab that in-memory provider, or sorry, the memory from the logger, and we'll go ahead and when the main layout is initialized, we'll attach to the onChange event this state has changed method from the layout component. So whenever there's a log event triggered, the UI will automatically update. So we didn't need this before because on the counter component, we had the button triggering a re-render for us. On the main layout, we don't have anything telling the main layout that the state has changed. So we're going to go ahead and utilize this action that we set up on our memory object. So whenever we write to that memory, it triggers a state has changed on the page layout. So now if we do Control F5, we'll go ahead and run this in the browser. And we can come back to, maybe I didn't save. Hang on a second. Let's go ahead and make sure we persisted this on, let's see, main layout. I'm going to add, oh, I forgot to write out. My bad. We're not actually putting it anywhere. Let's throw a, oops, wrong one. Let's throw, oh, we did, sorry. We've got our horizontal rule here. We did not save, that's what it is. Forgot to save this out. Ah, I see what I did. I still have my notes project open here. This is from our other project. Let's close this out. Sorry for the mix-up there, folks. We want to put this below our body tag. So we're going to throw a horizontal rule in and create a little region to write out the log statements. So we'll for each through the log that we've taken in memory and write those items out to the main layout when state has changed has been called. So that was the one that I missed. There we go. Now we can see the log is being rendered out to the page here. And each time we go to another page, you can see this is getting larger and larger. And there's our in-memory log. So we can narrow this down now And we can come in here and set the debug level to something like, let's set it to warning, and then we'll go back to our counter component. We're logging a warning in our counter component. So if we refresh this, did it rebuild? Let's rebuild. Make sure we're all rebuilt here. We have the latest bits. So we're not seeing any logging yet. We come over to our counter component and start clicking, and there's our log being written to memory. And no matter what page we're on, that's persistent to the application. If another part of the system triggered something to show up in the logs, it would automatically just be rendered on the page because we're wired into the state has changed on the main layout. So now we've taken our logger and made it actually right out to the screen, so we can kind of play around with that and do some things with it. So pretty cool stuff. Logging actually works very well in Wasm. There's some things to consider here, though, when we're writing these things to a log in, whether it's in the console or directly into the application like that. This is a disconnected environment. This is a WebAssembly application that I'm doing this in. So that data is not going to be persisted anywhere. If I close my browser tab out, that memory goes away. That application has shut down essentially, and that log is lost for good. So it is completely and entirely up to you as a developer to decide how you want to take that logging information and send that somewhere. So whether you're doing this on some sort of event and you're capturing that log and sending it over HTTP, or maybe you want to take it and stash it in browser storage if something goes critical, then you can save it to browser storage. And then when the user visits the app, when things have stabilized, you can pull that log out of their local storage and send it up through an HTTP request. Or maybe you're only using this in development mode, and you are working on a problem. You can log those things out to either your application through like a panel somewhere, or you can log it out to the console in the browser. What's nice is you can control whether these loggers are enabled or not through configuration. The one that we've built so far doesn't have that ability, so we can go back and look at how to do that. Now, I haven't researched this too much yet. Like I said, the code wasn't too bad. If we do a quick search for custom logging provider, there are some .NET docs on how to do this. They create a color console logger, which wouldn't have done us a whole lot of good, I don't think, in WebAssembly, but you could see some of the code that I borrowed here. And if we look, they do have configuration implemented in this as well. So what we can do is set up that configuration. We'll borrow from them and see what they're using. So in their custom logger, this color console logger, they have a color console logger configuration. They have an event ID. I think they're maybe color coding things based on an ID. They have the log level and the color of the logger that they want to use in the console. So when this is constructed, they not only name it, but they give it a configuration, which that ends up being used in the logger for seeing if it is enabled or not. Hey, it's Eagle. We are on a subject that probably lines up fairly closely with testing, and that is logging. So We're doing some logging in WebAssembly today. Let's go ahead and add a configuration to this. So we talked a little bit about how we could do this. Let's go ahead and actually implement it. So I'm going to add, and I'm going to throw this again just in the root of my application, just because this is an example. I would probably put this in a class library if I was going to do this for my application. So let's call this InMemory Provider or InMemory Logger config. And we'll go ahead and add that to our project. And if we look back at the example, this InMemory Logger or this logger configuration is just a POCO or plain old class or plain old CLR object. So we can, let's go ahead and borrow their first lines there. So we're going to set up an event ID and a log level, and they're defaulting theirs to information, and then they're using that configuration. So we need to go over to our console or our InMemory Logger, and we can pass in that configuration object here. So we'll give us a config, and then we need to store that configuration somewhere. We could use a read-only string or a property. I don't think we're going to be getting this publicly anywhere, so we'll just say private read-only InMemory Logger config. We'll go ahead and underscore that. We'll do a little refactor here as well. And we'll put an underscore on name so we can make these a little bit more consistent. We'll drop this off of the constructor, and then we can say underscore config equals, I think we just called it config. So we've got our configuration available now to our InMemory Logger, and then we can fill out the log level is enabled portion. So we've got log level. Hey, Copperbeardy, welcome. So we've got the InMemory Logger now with a configuration, and if we look at our documentation for this, we're just going to check the log level, and if the log level is if the log level matches our configuration setting for log level, we'll go ahead and enable logging. And then to actually make use of this, we need to say if is enabled, and then we'll move up our logging statement inside there. So it's actually making use of it. And then this, I copied this wrong. This statement is, sorry, if it, oh, they did a reverse logic here. I like this. So in case we add more code down there, it makes it easier to read, makes it much more accessible. So what we could do, I like to put these on a single line. So what they're saying here is if this is not enabled, we give it the log level because each log event is going to pass us that log level. Then we'll go ahead and just throw it back. We're not going to, it's void, so we'll just return nothing. And that will skip any code beneath that statement. So now we're free to just code up anything underneath there. So it's a return early pattern is what they call this. So we'll go ahead and return that if we're not going to use this logger. So now we have a configuration we can use. And then if we go back to our provider, that configuration is bubbling up here. So we need to implement that as well. I'm going to go ahead and look at their bit again just to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, they're doing the same exact thing, same pattern that we used for the state. So we'll go ahead and push this up here as a read-only property, except ours is called something different. InMemory Logger config, and then we'll go ahead and pass the configuration down like so. And then in our program CS, we are going to specify that that configuration. So we can inline new one up right in that provider statement, or we can do it up separately. With the new C#9 syntax, we can simply come over to, I'm surprised this isn't throwing an underscore in here. So we need to fix this up. I'm not actually passing that configuration off anywhere. So we need to say config, and then I forget the expression body member syntax at the moment. We'll go ahead and just expand this code block out instead. And we will say underscore config equals config to make sure that we're actually passing this through our constructor and setting it. And now we should have in our program CS little squiggly here. And we can satisfy that by setting our log new configuration underneath of this here. To do that, we can just say new, and it is putting the full text in there for me. I thought with C#9 we could just say new and it would understand it. So let's we can always refactor it out if we don't use it. They're setting log level to error, and they have a color to set to red. So we're going to set log level to, so the minimum log level is warning. We'll go ahead and set that here as well. These can be set independently, however. Log level configuration. Am I not giving it the right name here? Let's double check this guy. Public log level. Oh, I know what it is. It's not part of the constructor. It is a property, and a property only. So this parentheses needs to get closed here and become curlies. There we go. So now we can enable or disable that particular logger based on its level. So if our default log level was debug, this would in turn override that behavior. So we'll still only detect warnings and log those in memory. So now we've got configuration on this as well. So we should be able to come back and rerun this. And if I did this correctly, we're only logging the warnings, even though our system is capable of logging more than just warnings. So we've set this individually. So if we had multiple loggers in here, which is something that is quite possible, then we can set their levels individually. So we could have maybe there's a console logger that's logging everything to the console when it's debug, but if it's a critical logger, then it's going to do something more advanced with that log information. Cool. So now we've got configuration involved. And let's see, we've got about 5 minutes left. Before I end the show, I'll put this code up on the GitHub repo. So there is a GitHub repo for the show. where you can ask questions and leave issues. There is, let's see, Blazor Power Hour. We'll go ahead and share this in the various chat rooms that are attached to the show. And if you go to this URL, you'll find past show information. So I've been putting these in, except for week 10. I need to get that empty states show up there. But feel free to drop an issue with a question. We did a show one time on implementing touch gestures. I thought that was a lot of fun. That came from viewer submission. So feel free to submit things there, and I'll put the code that we did today up on this as well. Besides that, I wanted to make a quick mention of something to keep your eye on. So this is not a product that has really been announced publicly. It's not a secret, but it's not something we're advertising quite yet. But I want everybody to keep their eye out for this. This is really cool, and it's very subject appropriate. So I wanted to mention this. So I work for Telerik, or Progress, who makes the Telerik products. And a lot of you probably are aware of Fiddler. So Fiddler is a tool for inspecting HTTP traffic. It's a free tool, and we're beginning to develop a family of tools that go along with the idea of Fiddler. Nerd Herder says, Fiddler saves my butt every day. So while we're on the subject of logging, I wanted to give you a heads up for a product that is in development, and we have a page here to sign up for a pilot program if that's something that you're interested in. But this is called Fiddler Jam, and the idea behind Fiddler Jam is this is a logging it's like Fiddler, but it is more targeted for QA. So this is helping support teams get logs that are captured from clients. So it's something that we're working on right now. And the idea is maybe you have a client, a QA person or a client that needs help with something. Your application isn't running correctly on their system. So they are given a lightweight browser extension that loads up and it captures traffic going to and from your application. It securely shares that with you, the developer, so you can debug your issues. And this is essentially making it so that your clients, your customers and clients can easily use Fiddler and share that information securely with you, the developer, and troubleshoot their problems. So this is really cool. Like I said, currently in development, goes along with the logging that we're talking about today. So I thought I'd give you a little hot tip so you can follow this project and see how it comes along. So yeah, so you can record and replay things as a developer that happened in the field. So I'll just drop a link to Fiddler Jam so you can read a little bit about it. It's really cool, and I can't wait to see where this goes myself. Again, it's a pilot program, hasn't really been publicly announced or anything to any capacity, so you're hearing a little bit about it here first. So keep that in mind. This is a invite only type of a program right now. It's not something you can go get and play with today, but it's definitely something I think you might want to keep your eyes on. So that puts us at an hour, folks. We got our Blazor client-side WebAssembly logger. When can I expect a stable version? That's a question that I don't have a crystal ball for, but keep an eye on that page. If it's something that you're really seriously considering, click that button and fill out the form there. You might end up as part of the pilot program, but it's something to definitely keep an eye out for. So we got our client-side logger created, so you can take this idea and run with it. I'd love to hear if you want to post to the Blazor Power Hour issues page or anything like that. If you find a cool use for this logger, or maybe you have one that you're already using, something you grabbed off NuGet, etc., then drop me a line on our GitHub page. Nick, the first one, if you think that's something that will help your QAs a lot, check out that pilot program. There might be a way to get involved there. I'm not too sure. I know some general ideas of how the tool works and whatnot, but I'm not closely tied to the pilot program and things, so I don't know how they're rolling that out exactly, but it's something I want. It's something I wanted to share with everybody because I thought it was really cool. So it looks like Nick's already talking to his boss, so we'll see. Thanks again, everybody. Join us here all week for more shows. TJ Vantel will be on this afternoon talking about React. So TJ's got his React show coming up. I've got a show tomorrow. We'll be doing some more VR development with Facebook Horizon, which is so much fun and so cool. It's a brand new program by Facebook that lets you do development in VR, using VR for VR. It's very meta. It's very cool. Check that out tomorrow at about this time. We're leaving the show here now, so 11:30 Eastern time tomorrow. And then Friday on my show, Blazor State Has Changed. We are going to be working on, let me see here. We're going to be working on the Blazor Blazing Coffee app. So if you haven't seen the Blazing Coffee app yet, Blazing Coffee has been a lot of fun for me. It is available for everyone to download and try from our demos website now. You can actually try this live in the browser. You saw me build this on multiple shows over the last year, I guess. And it's available now. It's being hosted on our demos site, so you can go out and ping that and check it out. And we're going to be extending this in some capacity on Friday. So I have a whole bullet list of items that our program manager sent to myself and our engineering team to give this some new features, because we have lots of awesome new components that we put out. So we'll probably be adding like a scheduler in here, and we've just got a lot of fun ideas to add to this line of business application and make it a whole lot cooler. So one of the things I think we're going to tackle on Friday specifically is going to be the confirm delete button. So if I hit delete, it will completely wipe this record. What we want to do is set up a confirmation dialog to alert the user that they're about to delete something, and then maybe use a notification pop-up to let them know that record has been deleted. Cool. So we'll take care of that soon, and we'll work on that Friday. It'll probably be a longer show. So once again, thanks for coming and watching, and we have TJ coming up this afternoon. That's going to be in a bit though, so let's take our viewers here on the Code It Live channel, and we will push them out with a raid to another stream. We've got, let's see, we've got quite a bit of folks on my channel as well. Let me see if I can get a raid started on both of those. So give me one moment. And we will. There we go. We've got our raids set up. Let's see who we can raid today. We've got Lana. We've got... let's go ahead and raid Lana Lux. So she's doing Unity development, writing some C# code. Unless we've got some other suggestions. She'd be a good person to raid. Let's go ahead and raid Lana. I did not mean to hit clip that, by the way. So if you see a clip popping up. Yeah, we never raid her. She always follows. She's always streaming, I think it is. So we'll go ahead and get her queued up as a raid. We'll do a raid here as well. We're sending both of our channels over to Lana. And we will see you all soon. Say hi to Lana for me. We were talking about my Thursday stream on her show a couple days ago. So she's a great host there. Say hi. All right, folks. The rest of you are watching on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks again for watching. I can't raid you, unfortunately. So take care, and we'll see you soon.